Great. Well, it's good to see more people joining. We'll probably see a few people join over the next several minutes too. But Jim, here, let me make you host so you can get started whenever you'd like.
Okay.
And
yeah, Jim, this is John Carpenter. I joined as well.
Yep. Hey, John,
thanks.
So let me see if I can grab you and then make you a co-host as well. There you go. Cool.
Thank you.
And the streaming just started, so if you want to kick things off whenever you're ready, please feel free to do so.
Okay, great. I will. So I want to thank everybody for attending today. This is the Boston Hyperledger meetup, but we're part of a virtual meetup organization that David Boswell runs for Linux Foundation. And what's interesting is we've had, through the virtual meetup process, have had participation from a broad number of groups for each one of these. So John Carpenter, who's my co-host today, he runs the Denver meetup. And then we have...
Sorry, 1 second. Hello?
Hi, Isabella, you're...
oh, shoot.
Yeah, there you go. So John Carpenter is going to be my co-host today. And we're very fortunate to have Tong Lee, who's a senior software engineer from IBM Raleigh. And Tong has done a lot of things with IBM, focused heavily on cloud, OpenStack, and all kinds of software technologies. Who's a senior. But Tong also, we're very fortunate that he has spent a lot of time with Hyperledger Fabric. And I work with the documentation team for Fabric, and we sort of create what I call is the encyclopedia of documentation. It's not something that's lightweight or easy to use, as any of you can vouch. And what's nice is Tong has created a fantastic framework or tool set called Minifabric. I think it's a huge opportunity for all of us in the Fabric space. I won't even go through it, let him take it from here. So Tong, if you want to take over.
All right. Thank you. Let me share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yep, coming through fine.
Yep, looks great.
All right, awesome. Okay, for this meeting, I created a few slides. So I'm gonna go through these slides as well. So give everybody a good idea that what Minifabric is all about. Okay, I have two monitors. Sometimes when I do the presentation, it's kind of a little bit difficult to see if you guys see the main screen. So are you guys seeing the Hyperledger Minifabric?
Yep, that's coming through.
Okay, great. All right, so thanks for the introduction. And let me just dive into Minifabric, directly. Everybody knows if you have worked on Fabric, Hyperledger Fabric, it's common knowledge that get this thing going. It's not a trivial task. First, you have to have pretty good understanding what Fabric is. Then you need to understand the key concept like peer node, older node, C node, all that kind of stuff. And then you have to understand what the chain code is all about, why the chain code exists. Is the chain code the smart contract? What do I do? They say, oh, I want to develop an application. They say even after I have a chain code developed, so what is next, right? It's kind of not easy for people to kind of start to learn Fabric, or even say, hey, I have an application I want to develop using Fabric. And of course, this is about blockchain itself. It's not that easy to grasp. So I've been working on Fabric for quite some time, and I talked to many of the customers, and even some of the users. They just want to know, just want to learn what the Fabric is all about. I found that it was always difficult to get people started on Fabric. We had a few tools in the past, but those tools, just the learning curve is just very big. In many cases, when you get at one point, now you have to stop, keep asking, okay, what do I do next, right? It seems to me that there is not a very clear path for the people get to, from A to B, or get to what they really want to. With all these issues, and I figured, if I can create some tool that's easy for the user to just, start up and they see things going, may be very helpful. I don't know if you guys ever heard of a product called the Minikube. Minikube actually is a small product. Help the users to learn Kubernetes. So if you want to learn Kubernetes, probably the very first tool you want to see maybe Minikube, right? Which help you set up a Kubernetes cluster on either a small machine or multiple machines. So I figured, if we can create a similar product, but for Hyperledger Fabric, that'll be great. So that's how I created this product I call the Minifabric. It is to help the user to start to learn Fabric really quickly. Not only that, but also they say you are an application developer, you work for a huge company or small company, in that matter. You wanted to use Fabric to do something, but you don't really care how Fabric actually was written or created. You just know this is a blockchain platform and you want to use it. So then you can use Minifabric, stand up your Fabric network very fast, and have example chain code or create your own chain code and deploy onto, and you can see how things work. So this is what the Minifabric does. I always like to have discussions during the presentation. If you have any questions, please stop me. If I just talk for alone for like 30 minutes, sometimes I lose track of, the things I wanted to talk about. And sometimes I don't know if you guys want me to talk about those things. So interaction is always welcome. So today I just want to talk about 5 major functions of Minifabric. As I mentioned, you can use Minifabric to stand up Fabric network really, really quickly. You just need to download the one script and then one command, your Fabric network is up running. If you have done things with the Fabric and you want to have your system cleaned up, again, it's just one other command. Things will go away and you're back to where you started.
This is Jim Mason. I do have one question, actually, a question that asked, is it possible to build Minifabric from source as opposed to downloading the binaries?
Oh, of course, you can. Minifabric was developed using Ansible script. So if you don't want to download actually the binary, it's not really a binary. The binary is, well, the thing you download is actually the little bit 10 lines of bash script for Linux and Mac. Little bit longer bash script for Windows. So then it basically use Docker container, which contains all the necessary script, Ansible script to accomplish things, tasks. If you want to run this natively on your machine, you can. But I normally wouldn't recommend to do that because then you will need Ansible or all the dependencies that Minifabric needs. Sometimes it just pollute your system, you know. But I mean, it depends on what you like to do. If you want to dig into how Minifabric was developed, of course, you can get all the source code from the GitHub repo and make changes as you like. It's open source anyway. Okay, so the first one is quick network deployment. The second is allow you to quickly create channels, join the peers to the channel. And if you don't like the default channel configuration, then you can easily modify them. In the past, when I work on Fabric, it's always a challenge that you want to tweak some of the parameters for a channel, but the process of the steps that you have to take is just way too long, and very easily you can make mistakes. But you don't know you made a mistake until many steps later, something is not working. Now you realize something is wrong, right? But you don't know what actually you did wrong, right? So, but Minifabric actually made this process a lot easier. You'll be able to make changes to the channel configuration, and you can inspect the configuration, all sort of things. The next is about chain code. I always feel, the developers that actually develop Fabric itself, the number of developers is always small. Majority of users probably choose to use Fabric for their applications. So when you start using Fabric, the very first thing probably is develop some smart contract. In Fabric world, we call chain code. So to be able to deploy the chain code that you created, when you make changes to the chain code, you wanted the changes to be also available on your Fabric network, and you will be able to test them. So Minifabric actually made all this a lot easier for you to develop your own chain code and invoke those chain code methods very quickly. You don't have to provide tons of parameters for one invoke method to work. Right? I will show you all this actually when we go into the different part of this talk. Policies in the organization. I don't know how many of you guys, when you worked on Fabric, have tried to expand your Fabric network. That means you already set up, let's say, 5 organization Fabric. Now you have new people, wanting to be part of this Fabric network. And what is the right process to bring in new organizations? If you are familiar with Bitcoin or Ethereum network, you probably think, oh, that's not a big deal. Just have your own node up running and you're doing the blockchain operations. But for Fabric, that is not that straightforward, because Fabric is permission-based blockchain system. Anyone trying to join to the Fabric, you have to be allowed to, right? So there is a process. Officially, there is a document. I don't know, probably it's like 20 steps you have to take to get one organization into your Fabric network. But with Minifabric, we made that process a lot easier. I mean, this is more advanced features, and I don't think we have time to actually go through this, but I will show you a lot of videos that you can watch if you are interested in how you can use a Minifabric to do this. And I break up those videos into different pieces. Each piece is about, probably 15 to 20 minutes. So you can watch the videos, if you're interested in specific topics. Minifabric also, when it was designed, I always have this application developers in mind. For example, you were developing a front-end apps that basically use Fabric APIs to work with chain code. You are not developing chain code. Chain code is already developed and running. Chain code was developed by somebody else. So you are responsible to actually, for your, I don't know, say app running on, I don't know, iPhone, right? So you care about how your application interact with Fabric network, right? How to connect to this network. This aspect of application development for many people working with Fabric is like a mystery, right? First, you have to learn the SDKs, then you have to learn each SDK, how you connect to a running Fabric, what are really needed. But when you use Minifabric, actually, Minifabric, when you start up the Fabric network or run few commands, if you have new members or new organization added, Minifabric can create those artifacts. I normally call them connection profiles. Probably other people call them different names, but the idea is that you get a piece of file that you can use this file to connect to a Fabric network and use those SDKs to let's say either to invoke transactions or do some queries, right? So Minifabric actually produce those things for you. You can just go ahead and use them. Okay. All right. So quick development. So as I said, Minifabric is really a tool to help you to learn and manage your Fabric network, such as channels, all sort of things. Minifabric itself is an open source project, live on GitHub. You can see the link here. Currently, it's under my name, but we wanted this to be eventually a project under Hyperledger umbrella. Minifabric itself is built on Azure, and you can see the status every time a changes is made to Minifabric, and the automated build and test process will kick off. You can see this actually the screen capture this from Azure pipeline. At that time, we only test Fabric release 1.4.1, 2.1. Now, actually, we test 2.2 as well because 2.2 is out. So every time we make changes to Minifabric, we pick the few releases just to make sure Minifabric will work against those releases. So it's always keep up to the latest release, and you can be sure that when you try a few things, and it has been tested already. So you don't have to worry that, oh, will this actually work? Can I use the latest release of Fabric? Okay. To get the Fabric is really, really easy. If you have Actually, let me switch that to the live. This is the GitHub repo. And that repo give you a little bit description. And very short, get started, sort of a README. And Minifabric actually, when you download it, it's really a small piece of a script. I can show you actually is this. That's basically Minifabric for Linux IOX. Linux OS X. It's the same script. It's just basically running Docker image. The Docker actually image lives on the Docker Hub. You don't have to download that because when we run this, it will put down the right image for you. So after you download, your system basically consists of one script and eventually one Docker container image. So as I mentioned earlier, you don't have to worry about installing dependencies on your system. Then you have all sort of dependency issues and then wrong versions of dependencies. You don't have to worry about that. Your system is clean. If you want to get rid of Minifabric, it's just one script to remove and one Docker container image to remove. That's it. Okay, so we have two different commands for different operating system. The requirement to run Minifabric is really the minimum. You just need to have a Docker 18.03 or newer in your operating system. Okay, you don't need like install a bunch of software. You just need Docker. And to be able to work with Fabric, most likely you already have Docker installed because the official Fabric distribution is the Docker image. Okay, let me switch back to my presentation. I want to give a little bit of highlight, and I mentioned some of this already, but I want to just go through this list real quick. Minifabric allow you to quickly deploy Fabric network with your own specification. I call this Fabric network specification. Basically, it just tells you, allows you to specify how many organizations you want this Fabric network to have, how many peers from each organization, basically define a layout of your Fabric network. But if you say, hey, forget that, I just want to use the default, then you don't even have to provide anything at all. So when you run it, it will just use the default spec, which come with the Minifabric container image. Okay, once you have the Fabric network up running, you have done your work, you want to clean things up, then you can just tear down everything very easily. Then you can create channels, join peers, install your chain code, or the chain code come with Minifabric. Minifabric package few chain code with the container image. If you just don't want to bother to provide any chain code, you can go ahead and use the packaged chain code for experience the Fabric network. Then you can approve, instantiate, or commit in the new 2.2, 2.x term. And you can also upgrade your chain code. This is important for chain code or application developers. Then you can use Minifabric command to invoke chain code method. This is completely dynamic. Minifabric does not hard code anything because when you have your own chain code installed, most likely you have different methods, and different methods have different parameters. So Minifabric made this complete dynamic. You invoke the method based on the chain code method you developed. Okay, there's nothing hard code there. Then you can query blocks and see what the transactions have happened on your network. And you can see the block hash and all the transactions included. And I mentioned that you can do the channel configuration change, and you can approve and update the channels. And Minifabric actually allow you to deal with private data collections. But again, this is more advanced. You can certainly look at some of the videos to see how this work. Bring in your organization, I mentioned that already. When you actually work with Fabric, one of the challenge work is that, but it's very common, is that how you expand your Fabric network. Let's say I want to add more servers, that those servers belong to organizations which may have been part of a Fabric network, or the organizations are not currently part of your Fabric network. So how do you actually use Minifabric to expand that so the new boot up servers suddenly become part of your Fabric network and be able to endorse transactions? So actually you can use this to set up your, to expand your Fabric network. Okay, I mentioned this, Minifabric create a lot of artifacts for application developers to connect to Fabric network. It also actually creates this file called a wallet. Some of the developers probably already knew that if you use VS Code and trying to develop some Fabric applications, you probably already work with the Fabric extension for VS Code. And Minifabric actually create those wallet files. And if you use the VS Code, you can directly import those wallets and the connection profiles into VS Code. Then you can start connect to the Fabric network set up by Minifabric. Okay. Since the wallets file format has been changed from 1.4x to 2.0, Minifabric actually support both. If you set up Fabric, use 1.4x release, it will create the wallets in that format. If you use 2.0x, then it will create the wallets in a newer format. Okay, I mentioned this, but I want to add, Minifabric actually can run on a very small spec virtual machine, like I showed you here. I normally just develop and run Minifabric on a VirtualBox VM, which is running on my MacBook. So I just give like this virtual machine normally 4 gig of memory and like a 20 gig of hard disk. So, I mean, in these days, that kind of spec is considered really a small server, right? So again, you can run Minifabric on Linux, OS X, and Windows. It only require Docker. So when I set up this virtual machine on my Mac, I normally just use Ubuntu. And once I have this virtual machine running, I simply just install Docker. That's all I need. Of course, if you have production grade servers, then you can use that as well. Okay, so earlier I mentioned that Minifabric, if you do not provide your own fabric network spec file, Minifabric has a default spec. So this actually is the default spec that Minifabric use, that packaged with the Minifabric Docker container image. So in this, this network spec file is really just a YAML file. It's extremely simple. You have like a root node called the fabric. You have to name that fabric, otherwise it wouldn't know that what this is about. Then you can define your CA node, peer node, and the older nodes. In this default spec, you have 2 CA nodes defined, and one for one organization. So the naming convention used in the spec is basically just a node name. Then the first part of the dotted notation is the node name. Then the rest of the part of the notation will be considered organization name. So in this case, the CA1 is the CA node name. org0.example.com is the organization name. And you can see I have 2 organizations here. Then peer, those notation use exact same convention. And I have two peer nodes for this organization, 2 peer nodes for the other organization. And then I have older nodes, 3 older nodes. And they belong to different organizations because their organization actually is example.com. Though we have this, use the common two part of the names, but they belong to different organizations. Someone asked me, always ask me, say, hey, I just want to have a solo network. If you have worked with Fabric, solo really means that you just have one older node. Mostly the reason why you want to do that is to save the resources, because you probably have rather small virtual machines. You don't want to have a lot of nodes running and run out of resource on your machine. But to be able to do that, using Minifabric is really, really easy. The only thing you have to do is get rid of these 2 nodes and just have one older node. Then you suddenly have a solo, right? Of course, you can have just one peer node for organization, right? You can also do that if you want to. So this gives you a lot of flexibility, and then set up a Fabric network the way you want it, right? There's nothing hard-coded here. Are there any questions?
Hey, Tong, I know that Umit has a couple of questions in the chat. And one of the questions is, talking about pulling a Docker image from the location, and then he couldn't find an instruction that shows how to compile Minifabric from source instead of pulling a pre-built image from Docker. So maybe, can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, sure. Okay, if you want to build Minifabric on your own environment, of course you have to clone this repo, right? Once you have the repo cloned, you have one Docker file, which is at the root of this repo. And to be able to build that Docker image, you just use the Docker command, Docker build. That's just one command. That's all you have to do. Yeah, of course, I can add a little bit of document, say how do you build it locally. The instruction will be extremely simple. Basically, Docker build -t, then the image name and dot. That's it.
Okay, and there's one other question from Anchit. It's, what are all the options for generating a peer order certificate, cryptogen, CA, or both?
Let's keep that when I actually do the demo.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
I think that's all we have for now, Tong. So I would go ahead and continue with your presentation.
Great. So we talk about the default Minifabric network spec files. And here I give you a couple, or actually 3 examples. So for example, this one, the first one, contains only older nodes. So you can imagine this may be a big organization. They're trying to probably host rather large fabric network. They only interested in older nodes. So you can set up 5 older nodes, use your own organization name. I made this up called the Ocean Tree. I don't know if there's such thing called the Ocean Tree, but anyway. The second one only contains peers. So these probably mimic like an organization come to the party a little bit late. They just wanted to set up a few peer nodes. This is the spec you can use. Once you have the peer nodes up running, then you can join existing Fabric network, right? Then your organization will be part of the network. The third example is more for like application developers, and you want to just have one older node to mimic the solo sort of setup. Then you want to have 2 peers. And for your own development, probably you don't care, the endorsement policy. You just want to make sure your chain code actually works correctly. And if that's the case, you can have a spec just like that. Okay, this has been already talked about. Once your Fabric network is up running, if you don't want it anymore, you just do Minifabric down or clean up, everything will be gone. And if you want to restart it, you just say restart. If you want to use a different release, you just specify that, use a -i. Actually, when I create these slides, probably we didn't have 2.0 yet. But now the default release is 2.2. But if you want to use 1.4.8, that's the only thing you have to do. And if you don't remember all the Minifabric command, you can simply say minifab-h. It will give you all the available command that you can use, or show all the capabilities. Okay, so this is supposed to be a demo here, and See, this presentation even have a video embedded. Right, let's not do that now. Okay, so let me actually start this fabric network. Then we talk about those channels, because start up a fabric network, even though the command is simple, but actually it took a little while. It's about 3 minutes, I think. So this is actually the little watch machine I have. So this is a VirtualBox. I have this just one Ubuntu virtual machine running. So I already used the SSH to connect to this machine. You can see that my directory is clean. There's nothing really here. And I don't have any Docker container running, all right? But I do have some images here. You can see that I have the Fabric images already downloaded. But don't worry, but if you don't have those images downloaded already, that's okay. Even if you don't have the Minifabric image downloaded, that's okay too. But if you have Docker available on your machine and you have the script, then you're fine. So I normally just put my Minifabric script into a location that I can use anywhere in my system. And you can see this is in the bin directory. So now I don't have any node running. The directory is clean. That means if I do Minifabric up, I'm using all the default, include the default network spec and even the chain code. So I would start this process up. Okay, now this is running. Then we can talk about other things. So I mentioned you can use Minifabric, create channels and join the peers to the channels. And you can see the channel configuration. And eventually, if you don't like what the default configurations are, you can make changes. As an application developer, you're probably interested in, for example, how many transactions should be included in a block. Okay, how long should it take for a block to be cut, right? I think the default is that you should. It's a 2 seconds. Every 2 seconds, Fabric will cut a block, regardless how many transactions included in a block. So in some cases, you know, you're doing the development, you don't want to just cut too many blocks. So you probably wanted to, you know, extend that time for how long a block should be cut. So you probably want to change that. So to create a channel, it's really, really easy in Minifabric. All you have to do is to say Minifab create, give a channel name. Okay, so here in this case, they just say, hey, the name is called a cool channel. Now, once the channel actually is created, because when the channel is created, there's nothing in the channel, right? There's no peer. So you have to join the peers into the channel, then you can do the transactions, right? So to join the peers currently running on where your Minifabric is really, really easy, because Minifabric knows how many peer nodes running on this machine, and will join all those peers into the channel that you created. Okay, to know what the channel configuration looks like, you can simply just do channel query. All right, it will produce a JSON file, then you can do inspection. And if you don't have these type of tools, get the channel configuration file. It's a little bit challenging. You have to use the, most likely, if you don't have an application developed for this, you probably most likely will have to use the command line tool to query the channel configurations, right? You will have quite a bit of steps to finish to actually see how the channel was configured, right? Then you can, let's say you want to change some things, and of course, make the channel configuration change, you have to sign those changes and make sure that according to the endorsement policy, you have to make sure that enough number of the organizations endorse this change, and eventually you can make the update. So you have to make sure the changes have been signed by different organizations. In Minifabric, it's just say, hey, channel sign. So assume you have a large fabric network, you have many organizations, most likely you will have to have multiple organizations sign the channel change request, and eventually you can update. Okay. But if you have everything running on one machine, so this will be very, very easy. You just need to do channel sign and channel update. The channels in question will be actually changed. But if you have, as I said, many organizations expand over the world, but still you will be able to use Minifab, actually sign the change and eventually do channel update. The command will be the same. It's just the context is a little bit different. Okay, so I was talking about the context. So you probably wonder why the Minifabric command each looks so short. And the only thing sort of required is something you care about the most. For example, when you create a channel, you better give a channel name, because otherwise Minifabric doesn't know, or actually will use what already saved in the context. I call this Minifabric execution context. Here, every time you run Minifab command, it will tell you what the context is. For example, this is basically a screenshot, and I don't remember what command I run, but every command that you run, you see the exact same context currently you're using. So in this case, the Fabric release is 2.2. The channel name is my channel, and the peer database type is a Go level. And you can imagine that we actually also support, Minifabric also support CouchDB. If you just want to use a different database, you just specify that, use option. But of course, you have to specify that when you set up a peers, right? If your peers are already running and now you change that, when you try and run an invoke chain code command, that change wouldn't really matter, right? The chain code language, because when you install chain code, the chain code can be created, use Go, Java, or Node. So you have to tell Minifabric that what you want to use, but the default is Go. Okay, the chain code name, chain code version, whether when you chain code actually requires an inlet method, all that kind of stuff, right? when you invoke chain code or when you initialize a chain code, what is the parameter you're supposed to use? Minifabric default to this because it default to a chain code is called a simple, which comes from Fabric repository, also named simple. Actually, I think the name changed a few times. Originally, I think the chain code was called AB stores, but later on it was changed to simple. But anyway, it's just a chain code developed a long time ago, which works on Fabric 1.4 onwards. Okay, that's the reason I picked this chain code, that if you don't want to develop any chain code, you can go ahead and use this just to experience it. Okay, that chain code just happens to have an initialize method which takes 4 parameters. Okay. Then you can also specify whether the chain code actually is a private, deal with the private data collections. So those is important. I mentioned earlier that Minifabric actually allow you to deal with private data collection. Okay, so you need to specify that. Okay, next, chain code policy. When you install eventually initialize or approve chain code, if you don't want the default channel endorsement policy, you can go ahead and specify chain code policy, use the syntax that complying with Fabric chain code policy syntax. Then if you deal with the private data collection, then you can pass in the transient data. Okay, so there are a few others here, like the block number. This is when you're trying to query a ledger, and if you don't specify a block number, and it will always use the newest. So it will always return the top ledger block. You can inspect the content of that block. And the next one actually is really interesting. It's called the expose endpoints. When Minifabric set up a Fabric network, it actually create a Docker network. All the peer nodes, older nodes actually will be running on that Docker network. So this is done by purpose, that you can access all the ports, the default node ports, all right? And also shield your Fabric network from attack from outside of your machine, because it just runs on the Docker network. However, in some of the cases, you say, yeah, I set up the Fabric network on this machine, but I want the port, those peer node or older node ports to be exposed outside this machine, right? So that other people actually can use my peer node or use my older nodes, right? If you want that to happen, then you will have to expose your peer or older node endpoints outside the machine that you're running those Docker containers. Okay, so that's what it's for. And it's actually quite important if you develop your application running on totally different machine or even on the internet. Then when you set up your Fabric network, you would want those nodes to be exposed. By the way, when you use a Minifabric set up your Fabric network, it is always use the TLS on. So you would never set up a peer node without your certificate. Okay, and at the end, it also shows the working directory that is tell you where you are. Okay, so that's about the channels. Then let me talk about the chain code, and then we switch back to the Fabric network, which is, I think it should be already finished. Yes. Okay, so remember I start up this process. simply use just one command, minifab up. It shows the execution context, then give you tell you what it's doing. So the first is the verify options, then download the images. If your Hyperledger Fabric peer order, those images are not currently on your system, it will do that. Then we'll generate the certificates and do all sort of tasks. Eventually just say, okay, I'm up running. All right. So the total, each of the Minifabric command always tell you how long it take. So it take total of 3 minutes, 46 seconds for Minifabric to deploy your Fabric network and to create a channel, install the chain code, and actually initialize the chain code, and also do the discovery as well. So it took less than 4 minutes to do that. Of course, if this is the very, very first time you run this, it will take a little bit of time to download your Hyperledger Fabric Docker images. But since 1.5 or 6, I don't remember exactly, the Docker images for Hyperledger Fabric, the size has become really, really, really small. You can see that the older node now is only 38 meg. So pull down those images won't take a long time. Okay, so let me talk about the chain code, and then we can run a few things here.
Hey, Tom, I just want to let you know we're coming up on the top of the hour. So I don't know how long Jim put this out for the time, but just giving you a reminder there.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I was assuming maybe you might run at most maybe another 30 minutes. Is that reasonable? I don't know, with questions. I don't know what your...
Oh, I only have a few minutes to talk about chain code, and then I show a few commands.
That's fine.
I think
Great.
probably 10 minutes.
Perfect. Sounds good.
Right.
Thanks.
Sorry about that. I just didn't keep track of time. Okay, chain code. You can install chain code approve, and then commit, and discover, and invoke. Once you invoke a chain code, you want to see what actually is recorded on the ledger, and then you can do a block query. So you probably noticed that the example I have here is really just use the latest Fabric chain code life cycle approved commit. In the Fabric 1.4.x, you don't have actually those commands. It's the older way of, excuse me, dealing with chain code. But using Minifabric, you can use either old or new, depends on which Fabric release you have. Okay, so I want to talk about a little bit about the chain code. I mentioned that you can install the chain code come with Minifabric or the chain code you develop. If you have your own chain code developed, when you're trying to use Minifabric to install them, the only thing you have to do is go to the vars chain code directory, then create a subdirectory, use the whatever the name you prefer, and put all your chain code under that directory. If you develop using Go, you have to put in a Go subdirectory. If you use a Node, put it in a Node directory. So this name can be anything you like, but under that directory, the subdirectory has to use the language name that you use to develop your chain code. Otherwise, when you install Minifabric, it will not be able to find where your chain code is. Okay. Let's start the, okay. Okay, there's some policies, organizations also supported, but I will skip those. here I will actually switch to the live demo, because this is just one command to start up a Fabric network. Once everything is start up and running, and you can use another Minifabric command called the Minifabric stats. This actually tells you what currently running. Look at the node. Remember I talked about that particular one command that actually install a default chain code and initialize the chain code. That's why you see this containers running, and you see looks like the system is froze up. I don't know why. Can you guys still hear me?
Yeah, you're coming through fine, so you're broadcasting fine. We're just seeing you have a keychain problem with the login there.
There's something.
Yep.
Actually, I don't know what.
That's what I'm not sure what's sending that out, but it's a standard Mac message, obviously, for a login.
It locked me out.
Yeah, so you might be locked out. Maybe if you want to just, sort of pop back if we can't complete it at this point. Obviously,
okay.
We saw the thing run, and
right.
You do the status, which is great. The mini fabric stats came up good. So
okay. I don't know what's going on. Okay, so actually I wanted to do the block query and the channel query, and you see, and even show some of it.
I will say I saw you demo those before. They are very cool functions. The block query and the be able to see what actually went out to the ledger, which is a big deal. And you have videos on that as well, right? Off your
I have 6 videos.
Right.
Actually,
off of the GitHub thing,
yeah.
right? And so I believe that was one of the videos, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'd encourage people to look at the videos, because definitely the root of all good things, I think, is your GitHub repository.
Yep. Sorry about this keychain login. I don't remember I ever saw this before.
So that's
no idea what password.
Obviously on the Mac, and I don't know what it's looking for specifically, but
unproved caller.
Yeah, luckily your stuff gives better diagnostic messages than the Mac does.
All right. Okay. Well, I cannot.
Yeah. So with that,
is very unfortunate.
Yeah, that's all right. Do you want to bring, like I say, the videos are really comprehensive, the ones you have. And then I was going to suggest if you have a sort of a wrap-up screen just to summarize the features again, might be a good thing. And then as far as questions, the only thing we did have was that was answered earlier was about the how do I build it from source thing. And while that was all good, and so are the videos, the one question that comes up is if I'm going to build my own Docker image, I'm going to download the whole repo, right? And I'm going to edit the Docker image myself and then rebuild that Docker image, right?
Yeah, sure.
And if I do that, the only reason I can think to do it is maybe using some different TLS certificates. Does that make sense?
Well, I mean, if you only want to use your own certificates, you don't even have to build Minifabric. You just
Right.
need to put the certificates in the right place.
Yeah.
Then Minifabric will not certificates for you.
Thanks, Sam. So Sam is pointing out that it's looking for your admin password for the Mac. Nice. So
I
you
tried, but
it's
it doesn't
unfortunate.
work.
But the other thing that would have been nice is maybe convert the whole Mac system over to decentralized identifiers, and it wouldn't be asking for a keychain password then. But
it does not allow me to put anything there.
yeah, so yeah, we'll have to
I don't know.
wrap it up, I guess, on the demo side. Very instructive prompt, though. Certainly room for improvement. I get those all the time on my Mac as well. Okay, so Tom, is there, like I said, is there a summary screen you want to go to or something just to recap the features? Maybe
I cannot share though. That's the problem.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, so then I'll flip it out the other way. Let me check the chat. See if I've got questions.
About that.
I've got help from Sam telling you it's looking for your admin password for the keychain unlock, which is fair enough. Oh, yeah, here's a good question. Can we run Minifab in Kubernetes?
Oh, no. No, because Kubernetes, Minifabric really developed assume you have a machine, whether it's a virtual machine or it's Mac, it's a Windows.
Right.
You know, it does not deploy Fabric onto Kubernetes.
That's fine. And Kubernetes is a completely different environment anyway. It tries to orchestrate and manage all kinds of things on all the nodes it owns, so to speak. So it's a completely different kind of environment. The thing I'll ask though,
correct,
is if I use Minifab and I set up, like you did, multiple organizations, does any of your videos cover directly the concept of saying, okay, I would like now to distribute and take organization 2 and move it onto your machine from my machine? The mechanics of doing that.
You mean join new organization to the Fabric network, right?
Yeah, no, you already have that covered actually.
Yeah,
actually, no, that's fine. That's the right way to do it. So if I stood up org 1 and I said, okay, I want you to stand up org 2, then you can stand up org 2 with Minifab on your side, and then just I would have you join my network, so to speak.
Yep.
That would work.
Yeah, as one of the video actually described exactly that.
Yeah, excellent, perfect.
So the link on the README page take you to the Hyperledger YouTube channel. You will be able to find those 6 videos.
Yep. Yeah, no, it's actually very good because I started looking at those videos as well. So as a resource. So anything else before we wrap up? Okay.
I think that's all.
Well, Tong, I want to thank you. This is, like I say, looking at what the product does and having done it without the product and actually worked on the doc team, all I can tell you is you should have written this 3 years ago and had me attend a demo then, and I would have been far better off. I think I would have gotten 6 months of my life back. So, yeah, and actually I will say there's comments popping up that everybody who's gone as far as I have with Fabric on the admin side is just going, oh my God. That's pretty much the general comment I'm getting from this. And that's why I think it's worth, it'll be great when we publish it on the YouTube thing, but I also think maybe we could try to do an article or something and get it out there as well. And your concept of saying, let's make it a real project in Hyperledger would also be good. So
yeah, thank you.
Excellent. So we want to say thank you once again, and I appreciate the time you spent, and look forward to, in a sense, testing this on version 2.2, which I have not done. So that'll be great. Thank you, Tom.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.